For the mid-cap index, 250 points lower for the Nifty Bank and the Nifty at the lower end of today's trading range. What is also not too good for the sentiment is the fact that monsoon which has arrived in India, but weather forecasting agencies do indicate that the rainfall deficit is widening to over 40% this month. Manisha Gupta joins in with the details. Manisha.
Well, thank you so much for that. That absolutely is a dismal, concerning number because the IMD report suggests that we are staring at a 40% of a deficient monsoon on every single day for the month of June. And we did speak to Skymet earlier in the day, and they expect the month of June to actually end with nearly 40% deficiency. Now, remember, 18% of the 4-month rainfall happens in the month of June. 30% plus is what July and August contribute. And September, of course, being the last month, also does around 18 to 20%. The concerns really seem to be coming in on the progress of the monsoon itself. While, of course, it's a devolving El Nino, which both IMD and Skymet have come out with, but we have seen a delayed monsoon onset, a sluggish monsoon progress as well, and that really seems to be bothering. Add to that the fact that you also are looking at the water reservoirs only holding 18% of their total capacity of water right now, and the southern and the western states are holding water which is much below the 10-year average. So while of course the pre-monsoon showers were 23% deficient, June hasn't been so great, while of course there are expectations that the last week of June could be slightly positive and you could see better monsoons in the month of July. It is a delayed monsoon, and we earlier spoke to Skymet GP Sharma, and he also mentioned that the month of June will actually close on a much bleaker note.
My fear is the month of June is going to end with a deficiency of about 40%. Okay, as we stand. The initial figures which we gave, we stood at about 23%.
That's right.
But then it's going to be around 40%, maybe marginally 2% here or there. The northern parts of the country, in any case, next 2-3 days, I expect even some rains there also. However, the picking up the pace of the monsoon, that's not happening. Normally, southwest monsoon, you say southwesterly wind should be sweeping the peninsular India. That's not happening.
Sluggish monsoon progress so far. Thanks, Manisha, for that. Let's get you an update on JP Associates IBC case. ICICI Bank has moved the NCLAT seeking and expediting the IBC proceedings against the company. Ashmit Kumar joins in with more details.
Well, let's just begin with a small clarification that JP Associates is the parent company of JP Infratech. JP Infratech, of course, is in advanced stages of the IBC itself. The COC is deciding on the future course of action. The JP Associates, its parent, is the parent company. Now, keep in mind that JP Associates was one of the 26 companies that the RBI had recommended for initiation of IBC. That was the second list that was sent out from the RBI. And expectedly, ICICI Bank, which is claiming unpaid dues of 1,300 crore rupees, had moved against them in September of 2018. Yet, as of today, there's been little or no movement forward in this particular matter, and that was the concern for which ICICI Bank moved the NCLAT. They pointed out that this was playing into the hands of the promoter entity, which is JP Associates, pointing out that there has been a delay of 9 months despite the deadlines that have been prescribed under the IBC, and that the time is now for the NCLAT to intervene and to direct for expediting of the proceedings. Keep in mind that there has been a fair degree of back and forth in this case, with the case also going up to the Apex Court, whereby the promoters, JP Associates, had sought for doing away with ICICI Bank's IBC application. So there has been a fair amount of litigation. The matter is before the NCLT Ahmedabad. The NCLAT today, however, has refused to grant any immediate relief. What they have done is that posted this matter for July 1st, and that's when they will hear arguments on whether or not the case needs to be expedited, and that's when we can expect more clarity going forward as far as JP Associates resolution is concerned. Back to you.
Right, Ashmit, thanks a lot for that. Meanwhile, a couple of stocks which are at the low point of the day. Pull up Cipla, that's the one which is seeing a fair bit of selling. So that one's at the low point of the day. Along with that, we have Tech Mahindra 2 sitting at the lower end of today's trading range. So we have a lot of stocks which are in focus. Let's hop across to Sonal Bhutra for all the stocks that are making the news today. Sonal.
Thanks a lot for that, Mangnam. Well, a couple of these multiplexes and also these retail companies, they are in focus today on the back of a CLSA note, which says that the conversion from Accounting Standard 17 to Ind AS 116 is going to impact the balance sheets and the profitability of these companies because of higher debt and also because of lower profits. So these are some stocks that I'm keeping an eye on. Moving on, talking about Jain Irrigation, well, that stock continues to be in focus, is down in trade again today. Well, that is because the promoters have created a pledge of 35 lakh shares, that is 0.7% of the total equity, and now the promoter pledge is 14.7%, that is more than 50% of the total promoter holding of 28 odd %. Some pharma stocks, they are also in focus. That is because Laurus Labs says that US FDA has completed inspection of its API facilities in Unit 1 and 3. The inspection is completed with 2 observations. However, they say these are largely procedural in nature. Divi's Labs also some positive news coming in. Well, their Andhra Pradesh unit was inspected from 1st to 15th June, and this was a general good manufacturing practices inspection, and they have received a Form 483 with 0 observations, and that's why that stock is buzzing in trade today in an otherwise weak market. Well, these oil marketing companies are also in focus because the monthly data for the petroleum products demand has come out, and oil products demand is flat in May on a YOY basis. However, sequentially there is an improvement of around 5% and this month's growth compares with 0.3% growth that we saw last month and 0.6% that we saw in May 2018. But interestingly, the demand for ATF, petrol and diesel has increased on a YOY and on a sequential basis. So some positive trends also coming in.
Thanks, Sonal, for that. Let's get you a big CNBC TV18 exclusive. Our colleague Nisha Podar caught up with Yes Bank's Ravneet Gill and began by asking him about the 10,000 crore watch list given by the bank and 20,000 crore of sub-investment grade of assets in the total book. Also listen in to what he has to say on the big fundraise plan by Yes Bank.
If you look at the sub-investment grade book that we put out over there, it's a very clinical, objective exercise, Nisha. It's not as if that there is any discussion involved in terms of what we put there, what we don't put there. Anything that trips the rating on that particular portfolio just goes into that. So I don't think that we were selective in terms of putting that book out there.
Right.
Every account that was BB and below in terms of the rating found expression in that list. And I don't think that has fundamentally changed.
Right.
Coming to the watch list of 10,000 crores. I mean, how did we cull that out from the total, sub-investment grade book?
Right.
We saw exposures where there were repayments coming up, where we thought that the cash flows may be insufficient to service those. And we decided to just flag them preemptively. So I think what we did actually was to go out there, be proactive, be very transparent, and put it out there much in advance, rather than wanting to, hold back some disclosures.
Right.
So when you say that there's a disconnect in terms of, the book that we put out there vis-a-vis what the market perception is, it's something that I find a little difficult to explain.
Right. So there has been a UBS report, and most of the other analysts who have really analyzed your company post your results have all mentioned that there is an uncertainty about the asset risk in the assets that you have in the book. Now, there are several numbers which are much higher than what you have put out. Is there an internal thinking on also taking a much more cautious approach and in the present environment to overhaul your internal systems as well, Ravneet?
So I think a lot of what we disclosed during the Q4 results was a move towards more prudential accounting, a move towards more openness and transparency. And that's the reason why we actually put out a watch list.
Right.
So we've always had a sub-investment grade book out there, but for the first time we put out a watch list. And not only did we put out a watch list, we also went ahead and took some contingency provisions on that.
Right.
So I think what that really shows is a desire on our part, an intent on our part, to be very open in terms of our engagement and be very transparent.
Fundraising is also very important, Ravneet. Market wants to know how soon will you be able to raise funds, because there's enough and more concern raised on the way your stock price has moved, and therefore the concern coming in from investors as well. So is there a timeline that you can give to the market on when the fundraising will be complete in your view?
So I don't think it's any secret that we are working on that. It is something which has our fullest attention, a lot of effort going into that.
Right.
And my sense is that that whole process should get completed in very short order.
In very short means, can you give a timeline to that, Ravneet?
I wish I could, but I would say that it should happen relatively soon.
Okay, can we say that in the next quarter, we are in the end of the first quarter of this financial year, by second quarter end, it will definitely be complete?
Yes, I mean, I think that's a very reasonable estimate.
All right. When we talk about fundraising, now how much has that dented your plans of having a good fundraise because of the way your stock price has behaved? Because your market cap has almost halved from the time you start talking about QIP or PE investment.
Yeah, so I think if I look at it from the point of view of existing investors, obviously we would like to dilute at a higher price relative to the price where it currently is. But having said that, I think everybody is unanimous in their views that we must do whatever is in the best interest of the bank. And if the best interest of the bank gets served by raising capital, then the price becomes secondary.
Right.
Not only that, I think there's also a general belief that actually the capital raise will be the catalyst for the stock price as well. So we are very committed to raising capital at the earliest. And like I said to you, we should be able to complete that process in a short period as well.
So $1 billion from private equity fund looks unrealistic at this point and at this price. 27,000 crore rupees of market cap, which will dilute you way above your shareholders may be comfortable with.
So right now, if you see the resolutions that we had were for a 10% dilution or $1 billion, whichever was lower.
Right.
And I have to mention here that if there was a 10% cap, it was not because it was put by the board or by the, it was just that the proxy advisors mentioned that, the shareholders don't like enabling resolution with more than 10% dilution.
Right.
But for instance, if we had to dilute more in order to be able to, raise more capital,
right,
I'm sure we can go back to shareholders and get the necessary approvals.
Well, that's about Yes Bank should complete their fundraise by the end of Q2. But some negative news coming in from the telecom players, both Bharti as well as Vodafone Idea, because the DCC, the Digital Communications Committee, which is the highest decision-making authority of the Department of Telecommunication, has approved a penalty on these two players, on Bharti as well as on Vodafone Idea. Now, this is a dispute which actually goes back 3 years before Reliance Jio was planning to commercialize its operations, which happened in September of 2016. At that time, Reliance Jio had alleged that Bharti as well as Vodafone and Idea, at that time they were two separate companies, denied giving sufficient points of interconnection to Reliance Jio. So this is a dispute which goes back from 2016, and now both the incumbent players, Bharti and now the combined Vodafone Idea entity, have been found guilty, and therefore the DCC, or the Digital Communications Committee, the highest decision-making authority, which met today, has found the two players guilty. Now, where they've asked the TRAI to come in is to review the penalty amount. So earlier, the TRAI had recommended a penalty of 3,050 crore, which is broken up as follows: 1,050 crore for Bharti, 1,050 crore for Vodafone, and 950 crore for Idea, which means Bharti would have 1,050 and the combined entity would have 2,000 crore. But now the DOT has asked TRAI to revise that. I guess we'll have to see if the revision is higher or lower. But for now, this comes in as a negative news for the incumbent players.